Hey guys, TC Made with TC Gaming. Wanted to bring you a quick follow-up video to an ACF horse mounting video I'd done previously. Had some questions that had popped up regarding that as far as the timing of the animations and maybe making things a little bit more manageable as far as when the mounting occurs. So this isn't the only way to do this. It's just a way that I've used that I think seems a little bit simple, and I haven't completely finished this, so I'll show you the basics of it first, and then at the end of that video, or at the end of this video rather, I'll go through a couple of other little things to set up, but I don't want to do that all at once and get you, to where you're bored watching this thing or confused or whatever. So what we're shooting for basically is that when you hit the play button, when you get into interactable range, so I'm just going to kind of sneak up on the horse here, but when you get into an interact range and you hit the E key to interact, this will actually walk your player over towards that little red box that you see underneath of the horse's saddle, and then it'll play the animation to mount your horse. So something like that. And I have this kind of slowed down a little bit to make it a little bit better to watch, but he'll just basically walk over there to that point and then play the animation. So that's what we're shooting for. And then I'm going to show you a couple of other things that you can do to make this even better, as far as like, picking which side of the horse you're approaching from, and, how to trigger animations based on the modification of that variable. So let's go ahead and get into this real quick. Again, we're using Malber's animations from the Horse Anim Set Pro to run most of this stuff. We're in our ACF sample project. And what we want to do, first of all, is I like to pull up the ACF full player BP, the ACF mount BP, and the ACF full anim BP for the full player. And then also we're going to create this little action here called ACF horse mount that we're using in here. So in the ACF full player BP, what we want to do is we want to go in here and create a new event, a custom event, and it's going to be called Move Player 2. And I'll just leave this sit for a second while we talk about it so you can see all the nodes. But on the Move Player 2 custom event, what you're going to do is pass a value in for a location and a speed at which you want to do this, and then whatever the normal speed is to set it back to once you're done. And we're going to get a couple things that are going to be targeted for the character movement, because that's how we're going to change the speed that's on there. And we're also putting in, if there's any of the input actions that come in, like a WASD key or anything like that, that it's going to automatically interrupt this action so that you can not play the mount. In order to make something like this, what you would do is you just right click and you just say custom event. It's going to bring in your add custom event thing here, and you name it whatever you want to, my name for whatever the thing is. And then what you do is you go over here and you click on these inputs, and you can add different parameters in here, and these are basically going to be variables that you pass everything in on. So again, on these, what I did here is I have one called location, which is a vector, speed, which is a float, and then normal speed, which is also a float. So that's how you could create this. Just do that basic thing. The other things should already be in there. And a simple move to location will allow you to move your player to a goal. Again, we pass that location in. So once we have this built, what we want to do is we want to go into our ACF mount BP, and in the mount BP code, you already have some things that are kind of like this, and I just have a couple things that I'm setting. Actually, these don't need to be in here. I was playing around with some different options here. My computer's lagging a little bit too while doing this recording. I don't know if that's hard drive space related, so I apologize in advance if this thing's getting hosed up. But okay, so you normally would have code that looks similar to this with your ACF stop mount and all that stuff. So what we do is, coming out of our cast ACF character, and we go over here and get the controller and that false pin. This is already in here to set owner. What we're going to do is go and cast our ACF full player BP by getting the local ACF player character. And as that full player BP, we're going to also disable the input temporarily, and then we're going to pass and call that move player 2. So you drag this pin out and you say move player 2. That's going to call this function that this event rather, that we created over here. And we're going to give it a location. And the location of this is going to be the get world location of a thing called a start mount box. Now the start mount box is going to be just a basic trigger box that we place on the mesh. It's not tied to any parent sockets or anything. But this is just a simple collision box. You would do this by basically highlight the mesh or whatever and say add component and type in collision, and you should get the chance for a collision box or collision caps or whatever. I'm using collision boxes for mine. And once we put the collision box in there, what you do is you size this and locate it in such a way that it's where you want your player to basically be standing when they start to fire this mount off. So an easy way to place and size these things is actually if you go and hit these buttons where it has your perspective, you can go in here and you can go and say, let's look at this from the right-hand perspective. And then you can see the boxes there. All right, so that gives you a visualization of where it is along this plane. You can do the same thing with look at it from the top down, so you can get the width of it to match, basically where your stirrups are on the saddle. And then you can also do the same thing and do it from the front, so you can see that size as well. Whatever way helps you visualize this thing. But we're doing a couple things with this. Because it's a collision box, what I can do is, I don't know how long it's going to take my player to walk to that location from wherever I call that event. So what I'm doing is I'm basically using this as a collision detection to say, if I'm standing over here and I tell my player to walk over there, as soon as his mesh collides with this, I know he's reached that location. So I don't have to worry about counting the duration of the frames of an animation or montage or anything like that. I can just say, well, whenever you reach this point, you're going to let me know that by triggering this notification. So that's what's happening here in this mount blueprint in the event graph. I'm saying, go ahead and move my player to this world location. And I'm also setting a variable called isMounting, which is just a Boolean variable, which we can create in here and set that up. And this is also irrelevant. I put this in there earlier because my input was getting jacked up here. And you may want to take this disable input out of there. But if you're still pressing forward when you go to mount, you're going to move your character around. If you put a disable input in here, I re-enable mine at the end of this whole trigger action call. But technically, you may want to set this up to be a little bit different, because if it never calls this function down here, it's not going to set the input back on. So you might find a more elegant way to do that. I just haven't messed with it much beyond what I had in here. So again, we're going to set the move player to and set the isMounting variable. And then whenever we overlap that component box, let's let this thing save here. Whenever we overlap that component box called start mount box, if the branch is true that we are in an isMounting condition, then we would go ahead and cast to the ACF full player BP and trigger the action for actions.mount. Now, and then I also set isMounting back to false so that I could trigger it again. The reason I'm checking this is because we don't want every time he overlaps the box to go ahead and fire that action. We just only want it to happen if you've requested that by interacting over here and setting that move player to in the first place. So once the actions.mount gets called, and I can change this, I might change this. I have it set up right now to just be actions.mount, but I might change this in this video at the end to actions.mount.right and actions.mount.left, and then we'll figure out which one of those that we should call based on the approach to the horse. We could also have a actions.mount.back or rear or whatever you want to call it. But what happens is this actions.mount actually calls the ACF full Anim BP. And my computer is really lagging right now. I don't know why. Again, I think it might be hard drive space. Let me pause this video and clear that up. Well, actually, I guess it popped up now. If we go into the movement actions in here, under common actions, we added, down here at the bottom, we added a thing called actions.mount. And it's all the way down here on mine. I don't know why this is lagging so much, but it should be under common actions. Just fold these up here. So common actions, you're down the bottom of common actions here, and I should have an actions.mount. Apologize, this is lagging a little bit. We'll get there soon, though. Should be coming up. Okay, actions.mount. There we go. So in this one, I'm just calling the rider mount right montage. So again, I could change this to be the actions.mount.right. We'll do that in a minute. But the big thing here is on the rider mount montage. When you open this up, we have a variable that's in our Anim notifies, which calls an ACF action notify. Let's let that open up. So inside of our rider mount right montage, we've placed an ACF notify action in here, and you can get to these by just right clicking. And once you right click in here, you just say add notify. I think it's under add notify or add notify state. It'll be under one of those for sure. It's under add notify here. So ACF notify action. And you just place that wherever you want in the timeline. Now what I've done is I've selected a spot where my animation basically for the horse mounting is over. And my character's in position that right in here, I could clamp that actor. I could even do it like right here would be maybe better. But it's okay where it's at. If I fire the ACF notify action right here and say, go ahead and flip on the ACF mount, what this should do is it should basically socket that guy's pelvis right now to the horse. And so what the net result is that on the ACF mount BP, you're calling, by calling actions.mounts, you're saying play that montage that has the animation in it for mounting. And then when I get to a certain point within that sequence, go ahead and call in this other blueprint that's tied to that, over here where we have our ACF horse mount action. We call this action, and once that gets triggered, it goes into this blueprint. It hits that event on notable point reached, which you can get to by going over these function overrides. You'll see one in here called event on notable point reached, or on notable point reached. And you fire it there and you say, get all actors of class, ACF mount BP. And you run this out into a get a copy, which is an array. So you just pull out here and you say get, type in get, and you'll say get a copy. And you get the 0th element of the array, which matches ACF mount BP. So if you only have an ACF mount BP class in here, you get one of those. It'll be in the 0th position of this element. It'll return a hit to that. And then you can say, from there, I'm setting that as a variable called mount, which we can use for some other stuff later on, but it's just basically a reference to this mount. And you're saying from that, get the ACF mounting component as the target for the start mount function. And you're casting to your ACF full player BP again. And as the ACF full player BP, you're just re-enabling your input at the end of that mount animation. Okay? And you're passing the rider from ACF full player BP and also the enable input from that. And over here you're doing, if I maybe separate that out a little bit better so you can see, you got one pin going to here, one pin going to here to re-enable your input. And that gets called again at the end of this animation right here. When this ACF notify action triggers, it goes and hits this blueprint. Now to create that blueprint, this ACF horse mount blueprint, again, this is running really slow and I don't know why. I probably have to reboot this machine. But let me see if it just takes a second to get back out here. Hopefully we can go into the any spot in the anime or in the file here. Man, that thing's running slow. Let me pause it and I'll come back. Again, this is just running brutally slow. But to make this ACF horse mount BP, what you would do is you right click and you say you want a blueprint class. And under your blueprint class, you go down here where it has all classes, and you just say ACF notify. And there's an ACF notify action and an ACF notify action. There's one called Anim notify. So the one that I've chosen here is the one that has the, man, this is killing me with the saving. I'm going to shut my autosave off. Let me pause this again. Okay, sorry about that. So when I made this blueprint, as I was saying, there was notify actions, all that kind of stuff, but the one that I chose was actually one called ACF notify base action. You can see here in the parent class, which is the third thing down the list. You have path, cooking, file path length, and then parent class, Ascent Combat Framework, ACF base action. So you would right click out here, say blueprint class, and under here just type in ACF base. An ACF base action would be the thing that you're basing this on. That's the one that has the overrides in there for the notify actions and everything. So again, once you open that blueprint up, you have these function overrides, and you can just add this code in, and everything should be pretty good for you. Now, to make this a little bit easier for you to set up, if you go out to a website called Blueprint UE, which I'm going to show you on this link here. Brutally slow. If you go here to this website called Blueprint UE, so Blueprint, Unreal Engine, BlueprintUE.com, and you just go up here in the search box, search for TC_mount, and hit enter, and it should pull up these 3 blueprints that I put up there a couple days ago for you. One of them is for the ACF mount BP, one is for your ACF horse mount, and one is for ACF full player BP, which we talked about over here. So if you go to the one for full player BP, for example, this has that move player to an input action or whatever. And if you've never used this before, what you can actually do is you go down in here and you hit this little button, and it'll give you all the code that you can copy in here. So if you just click in the top of this, you hit, you should be able to, I usually just hit Control A, which selects everything. And once you have all that selected, you hit Control V, or I'm sorry, Control A to highlight it, Control C to copy it, and then hit it again with Control V. We'll paste it in other things here. So if you're inside of a blueprint on the Unreal Engine side, so let's say I was in this one already has the code in it, but let's say I was in a blueprint like this, I wanted to paste that in. Let's say I'll just do it in here for a second to show you. So if I go over into an empty space and hit Control V, what it'll do is it'll pull that code in for you, just like that. And then you can go, and when you hit compile, you'll probably have to put a couple of variables in there. So if I were to compile this and it says, oh, it's missing, XYZ variable, which it should do here. Let's see. No, actually, I guess I already had them in here. But if you were doing that and you got an issue with the variables, all you would do is right-click on this and say, promote the variable, and then recompile. So that's how you can use that. So the 3 that I have in there for you to make this hopefully a little bit easier, again, under TC_mount, would be the one for the full player BP, which gives you the move player to. And you can also hold down the control key and zoom in and out in here and right-click to move these around to see what's going on. You have that one for the full player. That's the one that gives you the move to. Then you have the ACF mount BP code, which is the one that's going to give you all the other stuff for on notable, or not on notable point reached, but for calling the actions.mount and yada yada yada. And then the last one that's in there is the one that we actually put in that code that we make for the notable point reached to cast all that and make it work. So hopefully this will give you guys a little bit of a help with getting this up and running for yourself and some different options. Now what I said was, basically this is the end of the video for those of you who just wanted to catch the update on that. What I'm going to show you now real quick is a couple of other things that you could do to make this even better. And a simple way to make this better for me would be another couple of overlap boxes. So what I would do in here, I would create an overlap box that is going to set a variable for me to tell me which location I'm approaching the horse from. And so what we could do is, if we go in here to our viewport, we could go in and add a component. And again, I just usually highlight the mesh because I want to put this on the horse so that it stays with the horse. And I would say add component, and I would just go in here and type in collision and let it blow up a collision box. And there's my new collision box. And now this one, I'm going to want this one to be on one side of the horse or the other. So there's your middle of the horse. So I would just put it just slightly to one side or the other. And then as far as the height of this thing goes, you can pull these out and go scale. And I would just scale this up a little bit, maybe make that 2. And I could drag that up to put it basically at his feet and up a little bit higher. because you're going to be walking into these. And then as far as the width of it, I think this is the width of that. Let's see if that's 2. Yeah. So we'll slide that out a little bit this way again. Using the center line, you get this big box out here. You basically want the edge of this box to be right around the same area where you would enter into the interaction range. So we may even make this a little bit bigger. But now that I've added that box on there, then what I would want to do is switch over here to the right hand side and see where this box is. So I'm going to put this basically to from the front of the horse to the back of the horse. So on this one here, maybe I'll go like 3 and put that about like that. Because we could also have another one that comes in from the back of the horse. If I look at this now from the rear perspective or from the back perspective, I can see that's covering that whole area back there. And what I would do with this box on this side here, I would call this something different. So I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this right side trigger box, or just right side trigger would even be fine. And what I would do in my event graph is I would go and I would create another collision over here. So once I have the right side trigger highlighted, go down here and I would just say on component begin overlap. And what I want to do is I want to say if this overlap happens, I want to just basically set a variable. And I'm going to put, I'll create a variable real quick down here. We go down to variables. And I'm going to create one called, I'll just call it something simple for this. We'll call it side to mount from. And for the type of this variable, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to pull this up, gives us our variable type, and we're going to go and look for gameplay tags. So you go to gameplay tag, and what you should be able to do in there now is when you go to set, slide this out, and you go set side to mount from, you should now have access to all your gameplay tags here. Okay. So what we're going to do is if this right side trigger box gets overlapped, we would set this mount. I've put a couple tags in here called, actually I guess I took them out, didn't I? So you go actions, mount, and we're going to highlight that little mount section, and we're going to hit the plus button on there. And I'm going to call this actions mount dot right. And I'm going to say add new tag. And I'm going to let it pick that tag in there. So actions.mount.right if it's the right side trigger. We would fire that right in there. And we just want to say if it's our other actor can be, let's see, I think I can just drag that into, I don't even know if we need to cast to, well, I guess you want to make sure that it's the other, that it's the thing. So cast to ACF full player BP. I think is all you have to do to that. And you could probably say convert to pure cast. And I don't even know if you need this in here. If you go back to convert to impure cast, then you can run this node into that. And then call your set over here. So that's, I don't even know if that's necessary. But again, you're kind of wanting to make sure that the other object that's overlapped the horse's trigger is the player that's actually trying to ride the horse. So now that we have set that variable over here to get actions.mount.right, we could do the same exact thing by going over here and saying duplicate. And over here we're going to call this the left side trigger. And back in our viewport, then what we would do is highlight the left side trigger. And we would push this. Let's go to the front of that horse. So there's we have a right side trigger, and now the left side trigger is in the same exact spot. So we just grab this and drag it over and put it on the left hand side of the horse. Again, we're looking at the horse. If you go back to perspective view, you could see these boxes in play. Okay. And so there's your one that's on the left side of the horse and the one's on the right. And again, we would highlight the left side trigger back in our event graph. And we would go in here and say on component begin overlap. And I just drag these up here. And again, you're going to basically do this exact same thing. So we'll just go to Control C and Control V. You're going to cast to that player. That's the other actor as the object. And on this one here, we would set our actions.mount.left. So we would go down here, actions, go and find mount again, hit the little plus button, and type in left. And add new tag. And so that's going to do actions.mount.left. Now, what we can do is we can use that information to tell this variable over here of what trigger action we want to have, since that's a tag that we created called side to mount from. We would just pull this out and say get side to mount from and plug that into our trigger action. Okay. Now to make that work, we also need in the full Anim BP that this action.mount over here is actually now called actions.mount. This is our one for the right side, so this would be actions.mount.right. So we would change that tag, and you also, it's got two tags on, I'm not sure why, but just make sure they're both set to actions.mount.right. And if you compile that, give it a second. Again, I don't know why this is so slow tonight. Probably should have rebooted my machine. Okay, and after we save that, we just go back here to our ACF mount BP. Now I'm gonna take this disable input, and I'm gonna take that out of play for right now, because what will happen if I don't is when I fire that animation, it goes over here to play this other trigger action. It's never going to get anywhere for the right or left side mount because I haven't set that up yet. So I'm just going to temporarily take that disable and re-enable input out of there. But once I saved everything, what we can do, we go out here to the horse. I'll show you what will happen. Again, this is running really, really slow, guys. Sorry. It's almost brutal to try and make these videos when this is running so slow. I'm sure it's hard to watch, too. It's kind of annoying, too, because I recently spent about $1,000 upgrading this machine and putting a new processor and motherboard in here. I'm sure it's not that. It just has to do something that's probably hard drive space. But again, if I walk over here and I get within interaction range, yeah, see, did I bomb that? Okay, go over here, get within interaction range, and he'll play that mounting animation. If I would happen to be over on this side of the horse, which I haven't set up yet, see, he'll move to that location, but he can't play the animation because I haven't set that up yet. So the move to is still going to work, but the mount animation will not. If I approach from this side, he's got a proper variable passing over to that gameplay tag calling the correct montage action. So to set up the other side of this, we go back into our Anim BPs here, and I actually have to go first to the Malber's animations that we have in here for the horse mount, Horse Anim Set Pro. And we would go into, I think I just have them in here, rider mannequin. So this was rider underscore mount dot or underscore right. So I'm going to do rider underscore mount underscore left, and right click this and just say create Anim montage, and I'll just leave the name of it alone, rider mount left Anim montage. Save that. Give these a second to compile and save. Open up the montage, and you're going to do the exact same thing here. You're going to find a point in the montage where he's basically in position to be firing that mount animation. You go over here to the notify, right click and say add notify, ACF notify action, and just put it somewhere close to that little trigger there. And then in the ACF full Anim BP, we want to create another action. So you gotta go all the way back up here Under common actions, hit plus. And the reason this is a common action is because you can do this anytime, right? You can mount your horse from any animation state that you're in, so that's what that's for. There's your new one that we just added here. Hasn't been defined yet. So this one here is going to be actions.mount.left. And under the montage action for that, we're going to pick it was left, rider mount left montage. And under the action, we're going to use the same ACF horse mount action that we created earlier. ACF horse mount action. And again, we'll just put our duplicate tag name in here. ACF mount left. And so now we have two montages, one for the right, one for the left, and these are getting called by overlapping a trigger box to fire the correct animation. We'll go back and do that again. You would do the same thing for the rear. I just think this is a simple way to do this with a couple trigger boxes to kind of tell you where you are in relationship to the things. So if I'm on the right side, it plays this. Again, these aren't the greatest animations the way this is set up right now, but you can tweak these a little bit. Go over here on this side and play it. Now I'm going to mount from this side. Okay. The key takeaway here is that we've separated the ACF mount call from the montage by intercepting an event inside of the montage and passing it off to an Anim notify blueprint handler. And I think that'll get you started for now. What I was saying you may want to do additional things is if you're coming in from the other side of the horse here. So if you come in this way, sometimes your move to puts you way out there on the side like that, and it's primarily because you're facing a different way here, So one of the things you could probably do is you could go, if the guy's coming in from here, there is a front animation to play. You could probably put an arrow or something in the game to get the world transform or the forward vector of that arrow and use it as the facing direction of your character, and then rotate your character to match whatever position he needs to be in to move that. That's something that you guys will have to kind of sort through and figure out. But as I get more information from this, so that people have sent me some things that look really good, kind of works out for them. I'm not sure if it works in all scenarios or cases yet, but I want to get you something real quick because this has come up a couple times, and I know maybe this will help you a little bit better with just how some of this looks. Okay. The other thing that you might want to know too, if you're running this horse and you jump off, in the sample version, that horse will just continue to run. So the way that you can fix that real quick is if you go into the horse, go into the mount blueprint. So go into ACF mount BP and click on the locomotion component, I believe. Or it could be under character movement. Go to character movement. And in here, there's a thing called braking friction. This is set to 0.1, I think, in the sample. You want to change that braking friction to a slightly higher value. I put mine on 0.7, so basically, whatever I let off of the acceleration. So if I'm on the horse and I'm accelerating, right, whenever I let off the acceleration, whenever I let off the acceleration, the horse will just slow down a little bit. And the same thing if I jump off the horse while it's riding, the horse will naturally coast down to a stop. Okay? So hopefully that helps you guys a little bit. And again, if I'm not in the right range here, see how the animations play weird? I just slid that around because I still have that movement is not being disabled. So that's something else we got to fix there. And that, again, what I did with mine is I just put that in the ACF code here for the mount. I just said, go over here and just say disable input. I thought I did. Oh, typo. Slow. Nearly unwatchable. Disable input is what you want here, and then that would give you the That would make it so that the character doesn't get to move around too much after you get him into the thing where you want to have him move to a location. But again, after the player moves to that and hits this overlap box, probably the first thing you want to do is say if the overlap box comes in, then you would maybe enable the input. But the problem is you don't want to really enable the input until you've triggered this action, you know. So if this doesn't ever happen, you'd be standing there with no input control. So you'll have to figure out a way to figure out when you want to actually do this. And if that call doesn't happen, you got to go have a way to revert back to input control. So hopefully that helps you guys. Again, it's a lot of rambling, and yeah, I think the big things here are these component overlap boxes to fire when things, you know, setting variables for you and stuff like that. Maybe that'll trigger something. If you guys come up with some ideas and you got better ways to do these things, by all means, comment on the videos, share what you can, and you know, try and help everybody in the community get things a little bit better. It's greatly appreciated by many people. I get a lot of thanks from people just for these simple videos, and I'm sure that they would appreciate any help. We all would, that anybody can give them, so, or give out. Again, TC Made, TC Gaming, thanks for watching, guys. I've been busy with a lot of stuff. We've got a new game coming out pretty soon. It's called Jack Saves Easter. I'm going to be posting some information about that pretty soon. Trying to get it out before the Easter holiday, of course, and get it out in early access to Steam here in the next, hopefully, very short period of time. I've said that 100 times now, and we've always found something else that needed to be fixed before it goes to market. So that's what I've been tied up with a little bit here, and working on some other stuff with another game that will be an ACF based game here pretty soon, and then I'll probably have some videos around that type of thing. So I want to give a shout out to my partner in business, MSOD Brushbeard, who has been working tirelessly to get the Jack Saves Easter game ready to go to market. And really, you know, my involvement has been a very small amount with actually just like creative direction here and there and some of the storyline. But MSOD's really done the lion's share of the work on that project, and I think it looks great. Hopefully you guys will like it if you get a chance to check it out. But I'll be putting some links and stuff out soon for that. Again, TC Made, TC Gaming. Catch you guys in another video soon. Take care.